skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The time has come for America to hear the truth.
We are going to stand with them, and not only are we going to fight for their rights, but we're going to stand up for our rights here in our state, in our homes, and in our community. One day longer, one day stronger. One day longer, one day stronger. Because the future of labor's rights in the United States of America is not going to be decided in the courts. It's not going to be decided in Congress. It's not going to be decided on talk radio, and it sure is not going to be decided on Fox News. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is... Am I on? Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, David Story. It is Saturday, January 30th, 2021, and we're broadcasting live online and on the radio on WVNN in the Huntsville, Decatur, Athens listening area from Athens, Alabama. A recording of this program will play tomorrow, Sunday, January 31st, 2021, on the great WGOL in Russellville, Alabama. Today, we are coming to you commercial-free. Even though you heard that bit, that bit at the beginning, we're gonna have to keep on that. We weren't able to get the commercials pulled out before the show, so we're going to be doing that manually, but we are coming to you commercial-free courtesy of the Alabama AFL-CIO, and we are talking to Molly Dice and Jenny Zundel, organizers with the IWW, about how do you do a union about it. We're going to be taking your questions. The number is 1-866-494-9866. If you want to go ahead and call in and get in the queue, we'll be taking your questions in the second half of the program. So make sure you call in, folks. 1-866-494-9866 is the number. Thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate your time. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. We stream the program. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we also clip segments and release them throughout the week. That way, if there's just one topic that looked interesting to you, you don't want to watch the full show, you can do that. We also upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, you can go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. And we do have a website, thevalleylaborreport.org. And finally, if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, then consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/thevalleylaborreport.
Am I on?
Am I on? Yes. Yes, we're on. And like I said, this morning we are talking to Molly Dice and Jenny Zundel. They are organizers with the IWW. They are giving the IWW's Organizer Training 101 to the Huntsville branch of the IWW. They've been doing that for the past month. Every Saturday from noon to 3 Central Standard Time. David and I have been enjoying what they've got to say. They've been doing a great job. And so, Jenny, Molly, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for asking us.
Thanks so much for having us.
So, y'all are organizers with the IWW. Y'all are trainers with the IWW. Can you tell us what made you want to be an organizer? What made you want to organize your workplace and get in general, what made you want to organize your workplace? And then specifically, what made you want to join the IWW?
Pick one.
I joined the IWW because there's a campaign at my workplace, which is not how everyone comes to the IWW. We pull from a lot of leftist organizations, but we want everyone to organize their own workplace. I also come from a union household. Almost everyone in my family was in a union. They're all teachers. And then before that, my grandfather was in UAW for a long time. And it just felt lots of those things going on in the IWW are where I wanted to be. There's a lot of ideals there that we're like putting into practice.
Jenny, what about you?
I didn't join through my workplace. So I'm currently in Seattle, but I'm from Montana, so I was living in Missoula. And I have a good friend there who was encouraging me for probably about a year to join. And then I had this just horrible job right out of college in a nonprofit social service field, and it was just so demoralizing. And I ended up quitting that job and taking a job with the AFL-CIO. And I think on the same day that I took the job with the AFL-CIO, it was just like a canvassing job. But I reached out to my friend and I was like, all right, I'm ready to get involved in the labor movement in the way that I want to, which wasn't the AFL-CIO. So I joined the IWW. But it wasn't until I took the organizer training a few months later that I really understood that the IWW does materially improve workers' lives. We'd actually had a campaign going, so I don't know why I didn't see it, but it was this training that we're going to talk about was such an moment for me. It was like, this is so cool. And like, we do things, and it made so much sense to me. So once I took that training, it was like, from then on out, like, of course I'm going to try to organize any workplace that I go to next, and bring elements of that in. It really clicked.
Yeah. And that's, you said that about wanting to organize any workplace, or if there's not a union in it already, you want to organize it. And if there is a union in it, you want to make it better, of course. And that's something that, I think a lot of people, they don't understand the kind of drive there. I told y'all before the show that I come on this station's morning show every Thursday, and there's this fella that tweets about my segment every time that I come on. And last week we were talking about the Amazon drive, and he said that if workers don't like the employment that they freely agreed to, they are free to seek other employment. And if they were so stupid enough to take such jobs, why should they dictate how the company is run? How would y'all answer that? Like, if a job is bad, do you just take another job? Is that always the answer?
In my experience, so all of the work I've done since I took the organizer training, excluding now I'm a nanny, but I worked in preschools in Montana and then Seattle. And in my experience is like, you love your work and it's awful, so there's always kind of two components to it. I think honestly, even a really good job where there are a few complaints, I think elements of organizing are still really useful and feel really good and make the workplace better for everyone. But in my experience, it's like, okay, if I quit my job and I take another one, okay, wow, that job sucks too. Like, especially if you're kind of working in the same field, there's often systemic problems where it's like, I can leave this preschool for another one, but I'm going to experience a lot of the same issues. So it's more effective, more empowering, and honestly more sustainable for workers in the job force if we're kind of staying where we are and improving that place, is how I feel.
This question makes me so angry. I don't know who signs on for the treatment that workers, especially at Amazon, face. I don't know who shakes that hand and is like, yes, I will take this job where I know I'll be on my feet enough. And then they find out, oh, actually, also, I can't take bathroom breaks.
Right.
And also, I'm going to be put to this efficiency quota that's impossible to make, and even supervisors are struggling, and then they'll be shuffled around and I'll be treated as not human. I think that a person who asked that question, and I don't really want to cast aspersions on someone I've literally never met, but I'd wonder if they've ever had a job where someone treated them like they were less than, because no one signs on for that. And that happens, I want to say, at every job that every person has. I think it's most obvious at these jobs that people don't want to have, but like must happen. Like, someone has to work at McDonald's. For Amazon to have 2-day shipping, someone needs to be constantly running at their workplace. And so those jobs have to exist. The people who have those jobs should have dignity in their work. Every single person deserves dignity in their work, and unions are a proven way to take back your dignity. So to me, it's kind of this question of why do you feel like those people aren't deserving of dignity?
And in these times, and probably it's been going on for years, but something that this, I assume he's a gentleman, I don't know.
Yes, he is.
What I constantly try to lay out for people that talk like this is the power dynamic and the balance, and for him to come to the understanding that that power dynamic is what we're trying to change, and we're trying to implement a democracy in the workplace, because at the end of the day, the workers are the ones generating the profit for this company, so they should have some say and an equal say, and possibly, you know, a more equal say than what they have right now. And you've got these, it's the same bootlicker mentality of, if you don't like this, go somewhere else. If you don't like the way the government's run, go somewhere else. If you don't like, you know, it's always go somewhere else. And that's not the solution to the answer. So how does the IWW, you know, I guess the question I'd pose to you is, how does the IWW promote democracy in the workplace? Because democracy is something that we enjoy talking about in America.
I would argue that the IWW is one of the more democratic unions. So we have very low dues. We don't have a lot of paid positions in the union. We don't do a political affiliations endorsements. And all our focus and what separates us from what we call business unionism, kind of the big ones, is this idea that 2 or more workers at a workplace trying to change their work for the better is a union. And that's how we treat it. As outside organizers, as external organizers, as Jenny and I are, I don't participate in their decision making. I'm there to provide assistance. The workers at that workplace are the union, and they democratically decide how to make every decision, which grievances to tackle, which tactics to take, how they're going to defend their wins. We really treat these workplace unions as their own community, and the IWW is just here to help that. We also have this idea that we're trying to make everyone into an organizer. So there's no hoarding of knowledge. There's no paid organizers. We want every person at a workplace to be armed with the knowledge to organize effectively, and there's no hierarchy. And I think that that's something that people kind of ping on bigger unions, is this like hoarding of knowledge and this like top down, like, okay, the organizer swooped in and told you what to do and then you did it. And that's just not what we're doing at all. That's the opposite of what we're doing. We're trying to raise up all of those workers so that they have all of the knowledge to do it themselves, and we're just here to help.
Yeah, that's something that really drew me to the IWW early on, was the extremely democratic and non-hierarchical set layout of the union itself, and you know that there's a lot to be said for that. You know that there's pluses and minuses, because it is incumbent upon the workers to learn how to you know, their leverage points and their pressure points and what they can and can't do, but So there's a big learning curve for workers there, unlike what you see in a traditional trade union or business union. But once they've learned those internal workings, then the dynamics open much wider, because you don't have one person dealing with the company. You have a group, a collective, which is what initially what the union was supposed to be about.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a great answer, y'all. And so let's just go ahead and jump into it. I said that y'all are trainers with the IWW, and you've been giving an organizer training, the IWW's organizer training 101 to the Huntsville branch, and for the past month from noon to 3 every Saturday. And so I wanted y'all to kind of just give us a brief, give us the 30-minute condensed, how does the IWW reckon the best way to organize a shop is?
Okay, we're gonna condense 12 hours into.
We're gonna condense a 12-hour training into 30 minutes. No pressure.
No role plays. The IWW is big on role plays. We think the best way to practice something is to actually just do it. So we'll cut out that. I'd say what we just were talking about and what David was just said is the beginning of our training. We have to introduce people to the IWW. We provide this training for members and non-members. They're usually pretty localized. That's over a weekend, but now it's obviously over Zoom because of the pandemic. And we have to tell people who the IWW is, because people think that we died out in the 50s with some of the branches that we were managing that kind of dissolved. So that's kind of a, hey, how ya? We're the IWW, we still exist. That's exciting. And then we really dig into the first steps of forming the committee. So the first step of any committee is you gotta know your workplace. So that includes gathering contacts and creating what we call a social map. I actually think Jenny describes social maps better than I do, so I'm just gonna make her do it.
Yeah, so we're trying to understand, we always like to say that your workplace is already organized. We're just trying to reorganize it in a way that is beneficial to the workers and builds that worker power. So the social chart is all about understanding how people are already connected, who talks to whom, who doesn't like someone, who plays D&D together, who has the same shifts, who never overlaps in the workplace. And it's just all about we draw it out. We always recommend, I think it's bubble.us, bubbl.us or something. I like to hand draw it though. But it's literally charting who is at your work, so that we can identify who's the social leader, who has a lot of influence over your coworkers. So we're not talking bosses and management, but who is an influential person over other coworkers. Who are you connected to? How should we approach, basically, how do we strategically approach talking to coworkers about what we're doing, about organizing a workplace? And we also do workplace mapping, which is pretty similar. I don't know if Molly, you wanted to add anything about social charting?
Yeah, and the reason why we start with this strong base of knowledge is that kind of organizing looks similar to a pyramid. I know this is an audio format, so I'm just going to describe a pyramid. The base is understanding your workplace. You can't do anything at that workplace without knowing exactly what's going on, the social dynamics, maybe the hierarchy of the internal management. And then the next steps are going to be one-on-ones, which is, we think the best way to move the movement forward is to have one-on-one personal conversations with a purpose with your coworkers. And funnily enough, this is a stumbling block for a lot of people. Talking to your coworkers is terrifying. So after you talk to your coworkers and hopefully you go through a fun acronym we have, which is AEIOU, the vowels, and we'll talk about that in a second. Once you've basically built people up, then you get to practicing democracy. So now we're kind of in the sugars, fruits, and vegetables part of the food pyramid, further towards the top. And practicing democracy is less of your time, but it's so important, and it's built on knowing your workplace, and those personal relationships. And then the very tip of the pyramid, the thing that you do the least but takes the most effort, is actual action, direct action. So when people think of a union, they think of strikes. They think of standing on your workplace and screaming union, or like standing on the table and screaming union. But actually what unionizing is just the rest of that pyramid. It's checking your contact sheet, making sure that your social map reflects maybe new information you know about somebody, like, oh, we just found out that Jim is Bob's cousin. Got to put that on there because Bob's the boss and it's important to know that information. Those personal conversations, they take a lot of time, they take a lot of effort, and you need to do them compassionately. So that's also some time. And then practicing democracy is the base, like, is the bedrock of how we're making these decisions. There's no one-man shop. It's everybody together. And then every now and then you engage in direct action and then fight for your wins. And that's something that we really think is important, especially with some of the like bigger movements that people have been seeing, like the Alphabet Workers Union. Mm-hmm. We hope and we pray that those organizers are really doing the one-on-ones and knowing their workplace before they move forward, because they're using the term minority union. We don't use that. I actually don't really like that term because it's kind of defeatist. Like, you're never going to get to the majority if you call yourself a minority union. Mm-hmm. What we call solidarity unionism, which is the solidarity of your coworkers is what holds you together and what keeps the union moving forward.
Yeah. And you know, you mentioned that about how you can think of the pyramid of organizing your workplace like you think about the food pyramid. You know, you need to have a lot of grains, and you need to have some stuff with protein, and then at the tippy top you get kind of your dessert. You get you get your direct action, or the things that everybody thinks about. You know, the things that gets everyone excited. But you've got so much. You've got to eat so much bread. You've got to have so much protein before you can helpfully engage in that direct action. And talking about how important the social mapping is and the workplace mapping is in doing the one-on-ones, which is the next step in the pyramid. You know, when you're trying to think strategically about how to do one-on-ones, who to do one-on-ones with, obviously, like you said, we don't like the term minority union. We like the term solidarity unionism, which is, because obviously you ultimately want everybody in the union, more or less, and even more. Yeah. Even if they have political disagreements with you, right? Like, we're not. This is something that I think by now, I hope even the conservative listeners in the audience know that we're not going to exclude conservative people in our unions. We can't. Not in Alabama. And so, if there's like a social hang-up between, like, it's personal, it's not even political. Let's say, like, Jimmy just doesn't like me, right? It's just a personal thing. That can't get in the way of our organizing. And so, I'm not going to be the one to talk to Jimmy. Maybe I get Susie to talk to Jimmy. Maybe they hang out sometimes, or maybe they're friendly. I get Susie to talk to Jimmy doing the one-on-one instead of me. And that's how you kind of you navigate these
but at the same time, what you're talking about, is one of the things that's really great about the unions, is the fact that it removes that nanny, no disrespect, it removes that nanny mentality of the boss, to where the workers actually come together as a group and solve issues between themselves, collectively, as opposed to running to tell mama that Jim Bob, called me a name.
Yeah, Jimmy hurt my feelings.
I want him fired now.
Right.
It forces people to act like adults in the workplace, and builds that solidarity there, and builds communication. It really does what most of the media and most of the rest of the world don't want you to do, and that's talk to each other, and listen to people, and that's one of the beautiful things about being in a union.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also we have a loose structure for how you do those one-on-ones that I'm sure you want us to talk about it because we see these vowels all the time. So it goes A-E-I-O-U. The A is agitate. You start those conversations by asking your coworkers what is bothering them, what is going on with you. You don't start with, hey, we should form a union, or hey, I heard you're conservative. You probably hate unions, but I think they're cool. Let me convince you of my point. Right. No, every person has something going on at their work that's really bothering them, and so you start with that. What's bothering you about what's happening at their workplace, and you engage in active listening, and you spend 80% of that conversation hopefully listening to them, and 20%, your 20%, talking a little bit about what's going on with you and asking leading questions because you actually are curious about what's going on at their workplace or with them. And I think that like natural curiosity about how other people are doing at your workplace is something that is hard for people it's like a muscle they've never used because we're always taught to kind of keep that, not supposed to swear, keep that to yourself. Like keep everything that you're feeling and just tell your spouse, tell your kids, tell your mom or your dad. Don't tell your coworkers. And that's the whole point is you don't tell your coworkers and then no one ever finds out. So that's A. And then Jenny, you should do E. We'll go back and forth.
And we've got about a minute left in the segment, so just letting y'all know.
All right, how about we just share what the letters stand for? So we have agitate that Molly just talked about, educate, inoculate, organize, and then the U. Some people say like the union makes us strong, push, and you like capitalize the U. That's what I usually do. There's a lot of debate around that, but it's the follow up.
Yeah, so you're educating workers about unions through stories and questions. You're inoculating them against their fears about the union. You're organizing them, giving them a task. So you'll see we actually went through a bunch of emotions before we got to task giving. Mm-hmm. And then the U is union, follow up, pushing people to do better, finding out what's holding them back, and then supporting them.
Right. And you know, the way that it's structured, it's not, you're not going to go through all of those letters in every single one-on-one that you have. You know, maybe you only do one or two in one-on-one. And, you know, I think that's important. One of the things that I actually heard in my first OT 101 with the IWW was that you don't want to drop the U-bomb right away, right? You want to, and it's not to, you know, be sneaky. It's like you really want to figure out what these people, what your coworkers need before you try to bring them in, before you try to sell them something. So we're going to talk more about that on the other side. Stay tuned.
Huntsville's #1 news, talk, and weather station. WVNN Athens. WVNN FM Trinity. A Cumulus station. It's 10 o'clock.
From ABC News, I'm Brian Clark. Over 90,000 people have died in the U.S. this month from COVID-19. It's the deadliest month of the pandemic, and with health experts worried about new variants of the virus, a third vaccine could soon be available. The candidate from Johnson & Johnson is not as effective as the offerings from Pfizer and Moderna, but Dr. Anthony Fauci says it's very important in other ways.
This is a single-shot vaccine in which you start to see efficacy anywhere from 7 to 10 days following the first and only shot.
Johnson & Johnson said nobody who got sick required hospitalization. The FDA will review the data, and ABC's Trevor Alt has the latest on the vaccination process.
On average, right now, the U.S. is vaccinating 1.2 million Americans a day. FEMA is helping to provide $1 billion in support to vaccination sites, but so far, only 7 states have vaccinated more than 10% of their populations, and a lot of locations are desperate to find the necessary staffing.
President Biden's calling on Congress to pass his proposed $1.9 trillion financial relief package. It includes $160 billion towards vaccinations. He said Friday,
We need to make these investments so the economy can grow the remainder of this year and next year. The investments now will help the economy grow. It will not, in fact, put a drag on the economy of spending this money.
Democrats in Congress signaling they could move forward without Republican support in the Senate. Story of the week was the Wall Street battle that saw small investors buying up shares of retailer GameStop, driving up prices. ABC's Deirdre Bolton says there's no suggestion of wrongdoing, but regulators are watching closely.
Many officials, analysts, and market experts are concerned that market turbulence may hurt individual investors. The SEC says, quote, it is closely monitoring and evaluating the situation.
Shares were up by 70% by the end of the day on Friday. You're listening to ABC News.
Cindy and her husband felt stuck paying annual fees on their timeshare. But what could they do?
We tried to sell it, but no results. No results at all.
Then they called Newton Group, and that's when things really started to happen.
We got a call within days. We never felt like they forgot us because we would get updates along the way.
Before long, they were free and clear.
We signed up with Newton Group in August, and it was a done deal by January.
And how's Cindy now?
We're very happy with Newton Group. It was a very, very positive experience for us, and we highly recommend them. And we are looking forward to not having to pay the $1,500 a year.
Do what Cindy did. Call Newton Group for your free consultation and free consumer's guide to timeshare exit. Call 877-TOP-EXIT. That's 877-TOP-EXIT. Newton Group has an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, so call them at 877-TOP-EXIT or visit newtonexit.com today.
Hey y'all, are you tired of hearing that the South is just a bunch of racist rednecks? Well, tune in to Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast. We talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. Join Nelson, Senior Telecommunications Director Tommy, Comrade Kate, former pig farmer Tyler, and Brother William, wherever you stream your podcast. Good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we'll see y'all next time. It's Dixieland of the Proletariat, y'all.
For up-to-the-minute news, log on to WVNN.com. Depend on it.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, David Story. We've got on the line Molly Dice and Jenny Zundel, organizer trainers with the IWW. We are talking about, we're just kind of just sprinting through the OT 101 that the IWW gives, and we've talked about understanding your workplace, how important that is in an organizing drive, because you're not gonna be able to organize a union at your workplace if you don't know what the people care about, if you don't know what's getting at them, if you don't know who likes who or the social maps, like what the social relationships are, you're just not going to be able to do it. You can't go into a workplace where workers are totally fine with their compensation and be like, don't you want to make more money, when what they care about is their control over their labor. Like, they want to have more of a say in what the company does. You're not going to be able to convince them to join a union if you don't speak to their issues. And so we talked about understanding your workplace. We talked about how one-on-ones are so important to that, how having these conversations with your coworkers is so important and integral in any organizing drive. And the IWW has a mnemonic device, AEIOU, that they use to help structure organizing conversations. And so we're going through that now. We talked about how agitating, that's why I say that, David and I are agitators, because we want to try to bring up what folks feel is missing, and maybe what they've never articulated before. Well,
we don't want to bring it up. What we want to do is open their minds to what they're missing.
Right. And so, it's obviously the dynamic is going to be a lot different when you're having a conversation with somebody rather than, monologuing on the radio. You like Molly said, you want to do an 80-20 thing. You want to really listen to them. You want to be listening to them 80% of the time and only talking 20% of the time to really understand what their problems are, because you don't, it's not about you. Even though union has you in it, it's not about you. It's about your coworkers. It's about everybody. And so, y'all talked about last week how important it is to pair agitation with education. How you don't want to just bring up those feelings. There's a lot of feelings involved in an organizing drive. You don't want to just bring up those kind of negative feelings and leave them hanging. You want to educate them a little bit. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so like Molly said, when you're agitating, you're trying to uncover these emotions. And a lot of these emotions are really negative. They're hurt, their fear, their powerlessness. A lot of times it's hopelessness, and that's a really, really hard one to kind of receive and to engage with. But it's a really big one. A lot of it's anger, despair. And so you're trying to agitate and like trying to force or help people, I guess. I don't want to say force, but like support people through uncovering those emotions and like stop looking away from them, because we do that to cope with our workplaces. But once we have all of these raw emotions out, it's really unkind to just like bounce after that. So we always say, if you agitate, you have to do some education, because education is where we bring in that hope. And education is still 80-20, which can be hard for people. It's the part where we want to be like, here's a bunch of stories I know about really successful unions, successful IWW shops. Like, I want to tell you all of these things about how we could have a better workplace. And so we really, it's a lot of holding ourselves back as the person who's trying to organize a coworker. But so it's still the 80-20 rule, but instead of, it's more leading questions rather than the open-ended questions of agitate. We're trying to lead people to this conclusion that if we used collective action, if we came together as coworkers, we would be stronger. We can make some of these changes. And we really want to keep it grounded. Like, I see a lot of hopelessness in agitation. And that often really happens if we're getting into these really big picture issues, like these really deep despairs about issues that really aren't grounded on the day-to-day issues. Like, they're things that we can't solve for, quickly, at least. It's a long ways out. So always trying to bring it back to like, what is an issue that would improve our lives that we can really take on right now? Like, Molly has a great example of when she worked at a museum, they were able to get water bottles, so they could drink water at the museum. And that makes such a big difference, but it's like small, and we can kind of come to a place where we feel hopeful and we feel excited and we're making a change. And we're seeing that change. Education is through that collective action process. What happens when we come together?
Yeah, and you mentioned last week when you were talking about educating, a lot of times people have these answers in themselves, even if they don't know it. Yeah. They'll be talking about a problem, and they'll instead of telling them how to fix it, ask them how they reckon it can be fixed, and then your job is to, because like you said, there's a lot of hopelessness there, even if they understand kind of theoretically that a problem can be fixed. After they tell you how that theoretically would happen, that's when you can kind of go into some stories about yeah, that's how it would be fixed, and like, this is how we can make that happen as workers, and have some stories ready with that are kind of similar and relevant in key ways.
Yeah, so you want to have stories and questions kind of ready to go that are relevant, and like proportional to the scale that you'd be working at. But I think with what you were just saying, Jacob, like, it's really important. A lot of times your coworkers will give you answers that you don't want to hear. Like, we don't think that going to HR is going to be effective or successful. For starters, it doesn't build worker power. The HR person is a peacemaker for your boss. They're like anti-lawsuit protection. But people are going to say that, like, let's go talk to HR about that. And it can be really hard as an organizer who is like, we shouldn't do that, to not just shut someone down. And so that's when we kind of go into inoculate, and I'll have Molly talk about inoculate a bit, but it's like, what do you think would happen with that is part of inoculate. Inoculate's really big, but right. Kind of walking through, like, what are the possible outcomes of what you're suggesting? Has it been done before? Has it been effective? And like, it's really hard not to just shut someone down, but it's really important to really walk through that process with them so they can come to these conclusions and learn things themselves, right? Rather than feeling like they're just being told no, or that you're smarter than them. It's just not a very good dynamic for people.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a great segue. You know, we're talking about bringing up these issues, talking about educating them, bringing the answers out of themselves, to educate them about how we can solve the problems that are agitating them. The next step is inoculating them against what the boss is going to do when we start trying to solve these problems. Molly, you know, what happens when you know, what is inoculation?
Yeah, this is, I think before pre-pandemic, we had to describe this metaphor a little bit more, but inoculating is giving somebody a little bit, like kind of a taste of this bad, this virus, and then they themselves can come up with the antibodies, come up with the reasons to kind of conquer their own fears. So I think that this is a really important step, because the work of organizing it's scary. It's scary to come together. It's scary to think these big thoughts about how to change your workplace. I think a really common education question and tactic that unions do is like having somebody come into a meeting with your boss with you. That's pretty obvious to unionized workers. That's a part of every contract. But to an ununionized person, that's a pretty radical idea to have somebody come with you when you're going to talk to your boss. So we suggest that pretty frequently. I just helped somebody do that recently, and they were really afraid about what the boss was going to say. So we went through the inoculation process, which is basically validating everybody's fear, because that's a real fear. They really have that. As Jenny said, you can't just tell them that they're wrong. You have to really walk them through, why do you think that? What do we think what's happened in the past? What's a likely outcome, and then how is it going to feel when that happens? So for this worker, we talked about what her boss was going to immediately react to when she asked to have somebody into the meeting, and then what would happen if they said no, and then what would happen if they said yes. And we kind of walked through the whole conversation and her fear about just even asking. And then it got to the point where she was feeling still like that fear was in her, but she had the ability to see what the possible paths forward are. And why we like to use the inoculate phrase for this. Also, that worked out very well for the worker. She brought a friend with her. She brought a loud dude with her, and he was able to shut down management trying to gaslight her. It was a good situation. But the inoculate also shows the power and the intelligence that's in unions, that's with workers coming together, because the worker can see that you've already told them the things that might happen. You've already told them the union busting playbook. So when it happens, they're like, yes, I am ready for this. The union was right. My boss is going to pull me into this meeting because they can see that I'm agitating. We're going to have a captive audience meeting, which for people who don't know, a captive audience meeting is when your boss pulls all the workers in together and is like, you're on the clock and you have to sit here and listen to me. And that's a space where they oftentimes, like especially in the No Evil Foods case, which I think y'all talked about pretty recently, those meetings were used as a cutthroat weapon to cut out union sentiment between the people who are on the fence. And that's a dangerous thing. There is a union busting playbook. It's literally written out. So inoculation is our tool to fight that, to fight the boss in their like emotional warfare that they're doing, because that's what it is. They're trying to get you to emotionally not want a union because logically it doesn't make any sense.
Right. And you know, that's so important, because if a worker hears one of these anti-union talking points, we can go to the Amazon's anti-union website to kind of look if you want like the standard, like just hot off the rack kind of anti-union talking points. You know, they sound really silly to us, but like, to a worker who hasn't been inoculated, that they've never heard these before, you know, you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to have to pay $500 in dues. Oh, I'm going to have to be, forced on strike. You know, these are they're all untrue or they're missing critical context. But like,
It's the same game.
If you
It
don't
is the
get
same
right,
game.
if you don't get to them first and inoculate them, which is why the analogy works so well, because like with the coronavirus, if you get inoculated against it, if you get the vaccine, it's not going to hurt you if you come into contact with it. But if you come into contact with the virus before you get inoculated, it can really wreak havoc. It's the exact same way with these anti-union talking points. If you hear them first and you hear them from a union organizer and you hear how they are BS, then it's not going to hurt you when the boss says it, because you've already heard it. You know he's lying to you. You know he's misrepresenting the facts, and it's not going to get to you. So the next thing is AEIO, organize. Talk to us about that. After you've educated them, you've agitated them, you've got them inoculated against the boss's lies. What do we do next?
So organize is all about the task. So to bring people into the union, we need to give them a task. And that's for a bunch of reasons. It's so that it's not just one person doing all of the work. We want it to be democratic and spread out. And we want to avoid burnout. It's also so that people are invested in the union. They have this buy-in. If we're not contributing to the union at all, why do we care? Why would we move forward? So it's such an integral part in the early stages, and I mean throughout the organizing, of course. But to bring people in originally, giving them a task is so important. And I see a lot of campaigns try to use inviting someone to a meeting as a task. And I just have to say, I think that's such a common error to make. But I want to bring it up because I think it's really shooting yourself in the foot. If someone comes to a meeting, that's not really a task. They're coming in, they feel like an observer. They often feel really like outside of the union. If they haven't been integrated into the union well enough, it can be really weird or confusing or just feel so separate from them. So we want to be giving workers tasks to do that can be helping with the social chart, updating it, because people always have different perspectives on that. It can be creating a workplace map, which we didn't really talk about, but it's physically mapping your workplace. Where are the bosses? Where are the workers? Are there security cameras, et cetera? It can be gathering contact information, creating a grievance list, journaling about the job, et cetera. And that's to get people invested and involved and to feel confident and a part of things. If we don't have a task, it doesn't feel like we're needed. But if we're contributing, it's we're part of this union, part of this team, where we're contributing, we're important, and it feels good. It feels good to have a task and to complete a task. And we often want to complete tasks together, rather than just saying, hey, do this. Maybe I'll check in with you later, maybe not. That's what Molly will talk about next, the follow-up. But it's, hey, let's sit down together and do a social chart, or do your list of grievances and let's come back and talk about it. I want to hear about that process. It's still collaborative, but it's a task.
And that I'd like to interject here because, we're talking about what we're doing to organize a union, but at the same time, we have a lot of union members that listen to us constantly, and part of what we like to do is educate our union members as well. And that is one of the big differences between the IWW and most of your industrial unions is you get so much gatekeeping, and I'm speaking specifically to people out there. They'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. You get so much gatekeeping in the traditional business union style and I think it's it's not from a place of wanting to hurt the union. It's they think that they get this hero syndrome, this hero mentality that, only I can do this, or only this person can do this, and we've got to do it this way. And that's so detrimental to the solidarity on the floor, of those workers. And I think that dynamic is the biggest difference between a business union and the IWW, is the fact that you're building power on the floor where it is most useful, as opposed to building power in this hierarchical structure where if this person don't come in and save us, then we're doomed, and that's a tremendous dynamic there, or a skill there that you're building.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think that there's a lot of things that union members in other unions can learn from and can incorporate into their practice from learning about these things from the IWW. And so that's why, I hope that the other union members in the audience get something out of this. And David was actually, he's done, he's incorporated some of this stuff into his union. I hope to do it into my union. He actually filed the first rank and file ULP in his local's history.
No, and to the best of my knowledge, in the International's history.
Right. And
no
now,
one has ever filed a ULP, and I come under great heat for that.
And now that's common practice in your local.
No, it's not common practice.
Well,
no, it's not common practice, but it's just like we talk about it with this organizing. It's baby steps. You don't. It's the same way with strikes. The first thing everybody hears is, if we form a union, we're going to go on strike. Look.
Yeah.
This is not about going on strike. This is the strike is the pinnacle, is really the last resort of the union. But there's so many other steps of that. But it's the baby steps, and it's that incorporating those baby steps to take back power from the gatekeepers and say, no, you're not going to speak for us. We speak for us. And when we do, we will begin seeing better change on the shop floor, as opposed to these, just like I said a while ago, these heroes that's going to come in and save us.
Right. So, Molly and Jenny, if you've got anything to add to that, feel free, and then you can go right into the follow-up.
The one thing I want to say is just, I think you're so dead on with it is baby steps. It is patience. Sometimes it is excruciating patience.
It's painful.
And that if you're not even inoculated against that it's not going to be an overnight thing. But it takes so much time to do the foundational work, and then to talk to your coworkers, and then it's not going to be one conversation in there. And I think I need to look up the statistic. I always try to cite it, and I don't know what it's about, but it's I want to say it's from a teachers union, from some union who has the statistic that it's like it takes about 7 one-on-one conversations with a coworker before they move up in their assessment value, which is how we do our assessments. It's a 1 if they have completed a task, they've acted in favor of the union. 2 is they are vocally in favor of the union. 3 is they're in the middle. 4 is they're vocally opposed to the union. 5 is they've acted against it. 6 we don't know. So that's on average. It could take much more than that. It could sometimes take less, but on average, it takes about 7 one-on-one times conversations to move someone up. And that's a long time. So patience is so key.
Yeah. What I like about follow-up is baked in is the idea that you can't single-handedly make a union happen. You have to delegate tasks. It's the whole, our big 3 things for any union is the IWW unions. We want them to be direct. You're engaging in direct action actually on the shop floor, democratic, obvious, and then caring. We want our unions to be caring, compassionate, community-oriented spaces. So that means, you got to follow up with people. You have to figure out what's going on with them. This is where our thing kind of falls down, because no one can agree what the U is. Some people use union, some people use push. I used to be a member of the Seattle branch, and we had a member who really liked support and just capitalized the U. But those all kind of indicate different aspects of what this last step is. And I kind of want to spring off into something that David was kind of talking about. It was the way that our IWW unions are moving forward is with a lot of patience and with a lot of effort and a lot of really concentrated long-term effort. And I think that speaks to something that sets us apart from a lot of other unions as well, which I know everybody will want to talk about, which is our unions don't necessarily have to go for an NLRB election.
Yeah.
We don't think you need to. Solidarity unionism kind of posits this idea that a dedicated committee at a workplace engaging in direct action with escalation plans can hold wins. Yep. And you don't need a contract. And I mean, we can get in on how why that idea is really attractive, and like why contracts can sometimes, and contractualism can kind of be at the detriment of those gains and wins. But our whole process and this whole acronym that mnemonic that we just went through is all towards this aim that the workers are engaged and they're taking action and defending their wins. And no part of that involved the National Labor Relations Board, authorization cards, or even like the larger IWW. We're just there to provide support for them.
Right. And that speaks to something that we constantly talk about, especially on conservative radio, is you have a lot of this mindset that they don't want the government involved. You know, it's this reactionary conservatism that, you know, the nanny state and things like that, and that really speaks to one of the avenues that they have that they're absolutely ignoring. Is there is a way to work around all of this, to work around the minimum, raising the minimum wage and going through the government for an election, and you know, and that's building solidarity in your workplace.
Right.
It's something that's extremely important.
Mm-hmm. And solidarity unionism, you know, it doesn't necessarily preclude going through an NLRB election, getting a contract, or anything like that. But it doesn't perceive that path as the only path. And you know, and like something that the Alphabet Workers Union mentioned, which even though they're calling it minority unionism, it's really kind of the same playbook. They said that really, you know, that is kind of the traditional mode of that is really that was the original mode of unionism. You know, we didn't have, before the NLRA, actually, when unions were kind of their most powerful, we didn't have government-backed contracts or anything like that. We had worker power and sit-ins and strikes and picket lines and things like that, and we had more union members then than we do now, and more power then than we do now, and you know,
and for how many years? I mean, for how many years has your traditional unions been dismissive of the IWW? And kind of it's always been a laugh and a joke, and the IWW. But now you're seeing with the Alphabet Workers Union and especially in CWA with the campus workers, they're beginning to realize that there's a whole lot more power.
Yeah, I mean, there's
there,
something there,
and they're co-opting our way of organizing into their unions now. So I think that speaks a lot to why the IWW is one of the better unions out there. Whether you know it should be a coming together of work, you know, of solidarity across unionism in general, as opposed to this continued winking and nod of the IWW type stuff.
Yeah, and I mean you and I do that. We're both members of AFL-CIO unions, and we want to try to incorporate, you know, some of the things to make our unions better. We're kind of, you know, we're dual carders. We're members of the IWW and other unions. We're kind of a ecumenical labor show, right? We want workers to organize. If you want to do it with the IWW, you want to do it with another union, like, that's great. We want to give you the tools to figure out what you reckon is going to work better, and go for it.
And hopefully use both. That's the entire point. Is there's benefits and drawbacks to both. But you know, there's certainly a tremendous benefit to organizing through the IWW or using the IWW process, because it builds power unlike any other traditional union does. It really brings that democratic workforce into play.
Yeah. So Molly and Jenny, I'll let y'all go ahead and run through the rest of the OT 101, and then we'll start. We'll bring some of the. We've got a caller on the line, and he's been waiting. And if you, I just saw somebody that I wasn't able to answer the phone. I'm sorry. 1-866-494-9866 will get you in the queue. But Molly and Jenny, go ahead and
finish up this
finish up the
organizing
finish
program.
up the OT 101 in 10 minutes that usually takes 4 hours, and then and then we'll answer a call.
Yeah, so today, actually, what we're going to do after this, the last day we kind of dig in on direct action. But really, like the what we've just been talking about of the difference, like our idea of how we view labor law, that's what our last day is. We're really just kind of going through why the IWW thinks that your campaign doesn't have to end in an NLRB election and a contract. And I think that our take on labor law and how that interacts with your actual organizing effort is something that makes IWW really unique. And as to what you both have said, yeah, we totally do also have contracts. The IWW manages quite a few contracts. But we let the workers decide democratically. I don't think we're the only union out there positing this, but I think we're the best at saying there's actually multiple ways that your organizing effort can go. Pick you're a democratically oriented union. You all can decide where you want this to go. And for some people that's a contract, and for some people it's a really strong solidarity union.
You're telling
that's
me
really
that
what our
you
last
don't...
day is just digging in on direct action, our tool to make change at your workplace, and then kind of those next steps of how to keep that going.
So, I mean, you're telling me that you don't tell the workers what they have to do? You don't overlord on them? I mean, that's the common talking point. The big union boss is going to come in and tell you what to do.
Yep.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that while, yes, we the workers are the union, they make those choices. We do have contracts. A lot of people in the union, what I really love about our training is it is so based in history and history from our conception in the early 1900s to many campaigns over the past couple of decades and what we have learned. And what a lot of folks have learned is often when you do go this NLRB route and this contractualism route is it can really be to the detriment of the union. We have some contracts that are really amazing. A co-op in Chicago just secured a really good contract. But overall, what we've seen is a lot of committees and unions have really lost speed and steam because these contracts and the election process is meant to stop direct action. It's work now, grieve later model. And it, the process for a lot of this is so long. People feel defeated, and we're really playing in the employer's field. They have the resources for the lawyers, for the labor laws on their side. The government is more on their side. It's such a hard battle for workers, which is why I think what we do well as the IWW and what I think unions do well historically is this collective action. And so we do, I think most organizers do try to encourage workers to stay where we have that power, because we do see a lot of defeatism and campaigns just really slowing down and being hurt by trying to go this NLRB route. But that's not to say we stop them. That's just to say we try to share our stories and the lessons we've learned.
And it's important to point out, because there's a lot of listeners out there, even extremely good union members, that don't understand when you talk about why the contracts may not be a good path. It's important to point out that what you're talking about is basically for the last maybe 60 to 80 years through contract negotiations. Basically, I mean, since the NLRA inception, the point was to create labor peace, and that labor peace come about through putting clauses in a contract that removed the employees or the members' ability to strike, except for during contract negotiations, and it also, in most cases, in almost all cases, inserted a clause that gave management right. It's called a management rights clause that basically says they have the right to manage the workforce.
Right.
And those two things is what has been detrimental to to membership power on the floor, because it removes all of that power and puts the reliance on a government agency. If you can't go through a grievance process, a government agency to solve the problem for you, and that's exactly where we don't want to be.
Yeah, yeah. So David, let's see if our caller's still on the line. We've had somebody hanging out, listening. Randy, you still there?
Yes. How y'all doing today?
I'm doing good. So Randy's been listening to the show. We really appreciate you listening. And Randy is actually he's the president of the local of that's organizing that Amazon shop down in Bessemer. So Randy, thank you so much for listening and for hanging on the line with us. And actually, folks that are listening, next week we're going to be talking to Randy and his lead organizer and some of the workers down there at Amazon for the whole show. So, really looking forward to that. But, Randy, thanks for listening. And what you got for us?
Well, I want to tell you how much. First, I want to tell you how. You there? Hello?
Yes, we're here. We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. First, I want to tell you how much I've enjoyed your show and how much I appreciate, and our membership at the RWDSU appreciates what you do every week and every day of your life trying to organize labor. And I just want to reemphasize about organizing. I've been in the labor movement for 43 years. I started out at a packing house where I was gutting hogs, and I got involved in the union, and that's how I got involved in the labor movement. I like to think I've been successful in what I do, and I'm an organizer at heart. I don't like being referred to as the president of the union. I like being referred to as an organizer of the union, and that's just what I am. But one thing I do know is that if the labor movement is going to continue to grow as we have continued to grow at the RWDSU, in the last, since 2011, our membership has went from 4,700 to now we're almost at 10,000, and that's not through merging, that's through hard organizing. And we've been extremely successful with it. We organized the Pilgrim Pride Plan, as you know, in Russellville, Alabama, which I head up that organizing campaign. We beat the employer 3-1. And one thing I can tell you about, and I say this every day, and this is how we ended up doing what we've done at Amazon. The leaders in the labor movement have to get off their butt and go to work. And they
I'm glad you're saying that, brother. Yeah. I'm glad you're saying that.
I am so aggravated and, excuse my French, pissed off because we've got so many people that don't want to get up and go to work and educate people about what the labor movement is. This is something that's in my heart. This is not a job for me. This is a calling. If it's not a calling in your heart, get out of the business.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get out of the movement.
Yeah, we need more people like that.
Build this labor movement.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you can organize your workplace.
And I can tell you that when you put the control in your membership hands and you lead them instead of pushing them, you will build your union. And building a union and organizing a union, I tell people, is like growing a garden. I'm an old man. You go out there and you till the field up, and then you sow the seeds, and then you have to nurture it. And you have to be out there every day to pull the weeds out. And the weeds are out there because management throws the weeds out there.
Yep.
And we must organize, and we must do it right. And that means get up and go to work.
Yep.
But ladies
Amen.
and gentlemen, I just want to say how much I've enjoyed your show. I want to say, hey, we're all in this together, and let's pull together. And there's 2 million of us that want to pull one way and one want to go the other direction. We need to put our labor movement together and all pull in the same direction, and we will build this union.
Yep. It's all about the workers.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Brother Randy. I appreciate it.
All right. Hey, y'all have a blessed day. And, be careful out there. and we're looking forward to seeing y'all in the future.
All right, brother.
care.
Yeah, we're going to be down there. There next weekend. We're and bringing y'all on the radio. So thanks so much, brother Randy. Yeah, I appreciate it. Molly and Jenny, y'all have anything to add to that?
I mean, I love that he emphasized that it's a garden. That's a great metaphor. Yeah, it takes a lot of work. You gotta kind of get in there, get your hands dirty, like actually get in and do all those small steps that lead to a union. I love that larger point, and I don't want to take it away from him or make it my own in any way, but everyone can organize their own workplace. You're a worker. If you're a worker, you can organize your workplace, and that's really the idea that the IWW posits, is that you can become an organizer and you can organize your own workplace. So seriously, if you're interested in organizing your workplace, reach out. The IWW's webpage has a form that you can fill out. You will talk to someone via email for a little bit, and then you will get on the line with actual organizers, and they will give you these steps that we just went through, but maybe more tailored to your situation. That's something that I do. I'm an external organizer for the IWW, so you might talk to me. But seriously, everyone can do it.
And the IWW's got, some of the best, in my opinion, some of the best in the business. Well, I say business. That's a terrible analogy, ain't it? But, I mean, they've got some of the best in the movement. We had Max on a few, maybe 2 months ago, and everybody that I have come in contact with as far as organizers through the IWW has just been absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, they're really passionate about it, and that's one of the things that kind of that does set the IWW apart a little bit is it's not. It's like really not about a paycheck. There's some staff that like it is their job and it is their paycheck, and there is that. And ultimately, I think for a lot of staff and for a lot of folks that are paid by the membership, it's not ultimately about the paycheck. But for the IWW, like it's really not, like, because they don't get one. So we've got Dan from Madison on the line now, and he is. And then David's answering the phone. We got somebody else calling in. So Dan from Madison, he's called in a few times, and we really appreciate him calling in. He's a good brother from the Letter Carriers Local 462 here in North Alabama. They're actually working on affiliating with our labor council. So we appreciate we appreciate that. And Dan, we appreciate you calling in. You wanted to tell a story about. The union saving your job, and then and then you had a question for us.
Well, I'm not so much union's going to save everybody's job. That's what they're there for. But they're also there for your benefits, which I have very good ones. So, you know what? I'm all for it. I have no problem. It's awesome that I have a union. I'm very fortunate and blessed. But I have a question that might puzzle you, and I need an answer because it's something that did happen. And now we got to figure out how to help these people. They lost the pipeline that I just had. What was the name of the pipeline? I just had a mental thought. I've got it written down.
Keystone.
The Keystone. That's right. The Keystone pipeline. These people have lost their jobs, and these jobs are high-paying jobs. You're talking over $100,000 plus, and these people have lost their jobs of a stroke of a pen. And these are also people that voted for the Biden that is pro-union. So what do we do for the people that have lost their jobs? And mind you, these jobs also benefit other people that live in these communities because hotels have to put these people up. And the hotel entrepreneur, he makes money also, or she does also. So where do we go from here? How do we help these union members? Where are they going to find high-paying jobs if they go back home and there's no high-paying jobs and they lost their job?
Right.
So it's a tough question, and I'm hoping you can give me some answers.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. And we've got a YouTube channel, the Valley Labor Report. You can go there, and we did a segment last week or the week before that, where we went through some of the Biden administration's first acts. And we did talk about this, and there's a few things to think about. For one, actually, a pipeline is ultimately going to be fewer jobs than transporting oil and gas via truck and things like that. So you're actually going to end up employing more people if you do it if you don't have a pipeline than if you do have a pipeline. So that's one thing. That doesn't that doesn't necessarily help the people that the pipe fitters that would have been, but the pipe fitters put the Teamsters out of work, right? Because that's ultimately what would have happened. But the pipe fitters, the electrical workers that are going to be on that job, they're part of these international unions, and they have. And one of the things that's really good about being in the trade unions is that if work dries up in your area, then you will be able to find a job in another area. The IBEW, the pipe fitters, they've got, if work dries up in your area, they've got work all over the country, all over the United States and Canada that you can go to, so that's a really good thing that these workers can fall back on. Additionally, we know, Dan, here in Huntsville what happened with Remington. They were promising boatloads of jobs and they did not deliver, and there are a lot of groups that reckon that the Keystone thing would be similar. They promised a boatload of jobs. Currently, there's only a few hundred union jobs that are good paying. But currently there's only a few hundred, and they reckon the estimate that was the ultimate number was probably a bit high, so that's another thing to consider. And the last thing to consider that I think is probably the most important is that this was on Native American treaty land that we are legally supposed to ask their permission for, and we did not. And in the Constitution, it says that our treaties that we make with sovereign nations, which these Native American tribes are supposed to be uber alles. Any treaty that we make with another country is supposed to supersede any other considerations. And so, it doesn't matter even if you can make 1 billion jobs on another country's land. If the other country says no, you can't do it, or you don't even ask permission, then we've got to respect their right to their land. And also we've got to consider it in the full context of what the Biden administration is doing with their other jobs. He did a Buy American executive order. He did an executive order that's going to be shooting to electrify the government fleet, which is estimated to create 1 million jobs, and his administration is going to be emphasizing union employment. So I think those are all things that we've got to consider when we're looking at the Keystone situation, and that's why ultimately as a union member, I'm not terribly for these individual workers. I know that they're going to be able to find employment doing something else, and the unions aren't stupid. They knew that Biden was going to do this, and they knew that it would still be in their interests to endorse Biden over Trump.
Are we back on the Keystone
yeah,
pipeline again?
I got a question for you.
Yeah, so I think that's my take. I think those are all things that are important to consider. And Molly, Jenny, and here's another thing to consider. The IWW does not endorse politicians at all. No union uses union dues to contribute to political campaigns, but the IWW does not endorse politicians. We don't do no union activity goes towards campaigns or politicians or anything like that. But I think that's stuff worth considering. Molly, Jenny, do you have anything to add to that? Or
I just want to say that I think that with issues like this, where it's intersecting a lot of different issues, I guess is the right word. We all exist in a global labor market, and I want to say a global labor movement. And from what I've seen, that pipeline and other really similar ones are going to do serious harm to other workers, in that they're going to pollute Native American land. They're going to pollute areas where workers, if you want to get really labor focused on it, it's going to harm other workers and harm other people. And I think in that case, looking at the global labor movement, it's a really good idea for us to not do harm and for us to show solidarity with each other about that.
Yeah. Well, I have a question. One more question. I'll hang up. And thanks again for letting me talk on the radio. The question I have is, and I'll give you my opinion when I ask you the question, and then you give me your opinion. I think it's safer to have a pipeline than travel on wheels, 18-wheelers, wind tankers that could easily, a car could cut across and hit a tanker head on. They could slip on ice, whatnot. So I think it's safer to transport in the pipeline than it is in a vehicle. Don't you agree?
We talked about this last week, and I think you're absolutely correct. I think the administration has done, and not just this administration, previous administrations as well, has done a lot of bloviating around the environmental impact that the pipeline may or may not have. But the thing for me is they've run this pipeline in many places through eminent domain. And if you're a conservative, and if you believe in conservative values, stealing someone's land, and especially stealing tribal land of people that we've already exploited for 100 years, it flies in the face of everything you believe. And anybody that stands up for that doesn't stand up for conservative or so-called conservative values or liberal values or really just any values.
Yeah, I mean, that I had a lot of stuff that I laid out, but I think that's really the biggest. That's really the linchpin in the thing is that this wasn't our land to do a pipeline on, and so there's not really much of a conversation to have after that. If it's not ours to do with, that's
amazing. Whenever you make a point, all of a sudden somebody hangs up.
Well, no, he said he was gonna. Yeah, he was like, I'm gonna ask you the question, and I'm gonna get off the air. But Dan, we appreciate you calling in, and I think it's important to have these conversations with folks that may have differing opinions or worldviews, and we're all we're still brothers in the labor movement. And
it goes back to the same thing we talk about every week, and everything in the media is created to divide people, and that is one thing that you're not going to hear on this show is a division among crappy ass political panderers is right and left. We're going to try to do our best to cut through the BS and tell you exactly the crux of the matter. And when you have people call in talking about, and it's on both sides, the environmental impact of the pipeline. The environmental impact is going to be 100 times worse with trains and trucks driving it, because that is crap oil. It's shell oil that's imported from Canada, going to the Gulf Coast, being sold to China, because nobody in America will refine the crap. So, and they're delivering it right now, and they've been delivering it for 10, 15 years. So the environmental impact is going to be much greater. But at the same time, you can't steal tribal people's land. You can't steal anybody's land, but especially the Native American land.
They've got so little left.
What kind of crap is that?
Yeah, that's.
It's also no one shows solidarity with Native causes. Our history has shown that we have. America has no solidarity with Native people, and that needs to stop, and it needs to change. And I think you're totally right. That's the overarching issue, and that's what we need to look at. But I mean, speaking to the environmentalism, we know that we need to move away from this.
Yes.
Why don't we start now?
Yeah.
I think that it's really obvious that solar and wind are where the jobs are. Why don't we talk about that? We're moving away from this. Obviously, it exists. It's what's happening right now. We need to deal with how we deal with oil right now, because it's 2021 and it's still happening. But looking towards the future, we really need to shift how we do stuff. Yep. So let's do it. Let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's put union jobs. Let's put more effort into these types of energy that are going to take us into the future.
Pipe fitters and electrical workers, they're going to get jobs when we're talking about making wind turbines and throwing up solar panels and stuff. That's the exact professions that we're going to need to actually build up an efficient and clean and sustainable energy source.
And you constantly have these people that want to talk about how far we are behind every other country, and especially China, because this seems to be the talking point nowadays is China Joe. America has always been innovative. They've always driven the innovation, and it seems to me like here lately the right wants to regress. And what we need to be doing is, like you just said, investing in moving into the future. If you want America to continue to be the leader, supposedly, then invest in the future. Get away from this crap and start, because it's going to put people to work. They're going to invest in educational resources, in development resources, as far as developing a better form of this solar panels and things like that. Let's get away from it. If you want to be the leader, then let's start doing it. But you can't lead from behind saying we need oil. Yeah, we need oil right now, but we also need to be investing in clean energy, because it's coming. At one point, whether you appreciate it or not, I mean, China's building most of your panels right now. Why aren't we building them in America?
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to invest in America.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So Molly, Jenny, we got a little bit sidetracked off of actually organizing, talking about, and I think it's relevant. People are talking about it. They want to see what union folks think, and so that's all fine and good. But we had y'all on to talk about organizing and how to do it, and so we've got about 5 minutes left, and so let's talk about that. Let's talk about how to organize your workplace, and like why you should do it, stuff like that. Have y'all got any kind of closing thoughts type stuff?
Yeah, I want to say, if you're out there listening, that I can't recommend our organizer training program enough, taking an OT 101. If you are not a member, see if there's a branch in your area. There's one in Huntsville. We're currently doing their training for them. Right now it's really unique. It's online because of COVID. So even if there's not a branch in your city, if there's one in your state, we also have been doing some trainings for at-large members. But I think a lot of this information is out there online. A lot of wobblies, which is what we call ourselves, have written about it. So you can find a lot of this information online, but I think attending a training is so invaluable. The conversations, the role playing, it's so interactive and engaging. I think there's a little bit lost with the Zoom training, but I still think it's really, really useful. I would just recommend also doing it offline once it's safe. But I really think that our training is, for me, it's the reason why I am a wobbly. I think it's such a beautiful model. It is strategic, but it's also so caring. I feel like the model that we use is really in line with how I feel, my values, my morals, but also how I think. It makes so much sense to me. And I really just can't underscore how amazing this training is. And to take it a few times, so you'll have different trainers have different beliefs, different things that they emphasize. But I think through and through, it's an amazing training. Get yourself to it if you can.
Yeah, and we've taken it. We've hosted the training twice. So once last year, once again this year, this being the final week. And,
we may try to.
It's been wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's nice seeing the dynamic play out between, because we've had completely different group of workers this time, and different group of instructors. And unfortunately, we're doing it over Zoom this time, so it's a little bit different than the last time when we done it in person. But I think that, even over Zoom, there's a little bit lost. But I think
you still get to do the role plays. You still get to do that and have that interaction.
It's really great.
Yeah, the biggest thing that we missed this time is David's cooking. Man, Molly and Jenny, y'all really missed out. David is really good at cooking.
I'd say my final remark is I sound like a broken record, but organize your workplace. Everyone can do it. As Jenny said, I think our training will really light a fire in you about how it's possible. It'll give you the tools, or you can organize your workplace.
Yep, that's great. I think that's a really good place to wrap it up. Organize your workplace. The IWW is online, IWW.org. You can go there.
Yeah, thank y'all so much for spending an hour and a half with us this morning.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it. And they're on the West Coast, so they got up at 7 this morning to talk to us. So thank y'all so much for hanging out. We will see Molly and Jenny here in about an hour. We'll see the rest of y'all next week.
WVNN Athens, WVNN FM Trinity, a Cumulus station. It's 11 o'clock. News starts now.
From ABC News, I'm Dave Pack.